Hello, everybody. I'm Susan Flanagan, and I'm an author in St. John's. If you're joining us from outside of Newfoundland and Labrador, welcome, and I hope you're enjoying the same nice weather that we're getting here today. 4 degrees and the sun's not set yet at 7 p.m. So my novel, Supermarket Baby, is about Henry Puddester, who goes to the supermarket to buy eggs and comes home with a baby, just like that one. So now more than ever, I think we need lighthearted reading material to distract us from what's happening in the world. So I wrote Supermarket Baby to make people laugh, to make you laugh about Henry and his antics, and to make you laugh at yourselves. So if you are reading the book and you find yourselves laughing, then let me know, because that means I've succeeded in my goal. And if you have a copy of Supermarket Baby outside of St. John's, why don't you send me a picture of it in your hometown? That'd be great. At the end of the live stream, there's going to be a question and answer session. So you can type your questions into the chat. And anyone who types a question or comment into the chat will be eligible to win a copy of the book. So stick around, put your questions into the chat while I'm doing the reading. And then you'll find out at the end if you're the winner or not. So buckle up for Chapter 1 of Supermarket Baby.
Shout out to Coleman's Market on Newfoundland Drive for allowing us to film here today. All videoing of Supermarket Baby was done outside of regular business hours, and all physical distancing protocols were observed. So here I go, Chapter 1. Henry Puddester goes to City Hall for the last time. Henry Puddester turned heads, had been doing since the moment he slid out of his mother's womb. All present in the case room were goggle-eyed. Have you ever seen such a perfect baby? They asked one another. They all agreed they hadn't, and warned the Puddesters that their son would grow up to be a real looker. By the time Henry began studying business marketing at Memorial University, students and profs alike could be seen appraising his looks. His perfect features, perfectly arrayed across his perfectly shaped face, sat on a well-seated head atop a lean torso. Women coveted his thick dark lashes and olive skin, and men felt inferior in his presence. Henry himself, however, was oblivious to the power of his looks. He failed to notice the steady stream of girls who, between classes, slowed to a canter in the crushing throngs that scuttled their way through the tunnel system below the university buildings. It was in this underground maze that relationships were cemented, notes slipped into ear vents, kisses stolen by locker doors, dates made in the 10 minutes of freedom between classes. "Isn't he to die for?" one girl asked. "Yes, but I heard he's taken." "Who's the lucky one?" The lucky girl, it turned out, was Millicent Pearlstein, a dark-haired firecracker of a woman who took one look into Henry's ocean eyes after he mistakenly trod on her foot outside the remains of the burning Thompson Student Center. It was a crisp day in late September 1979. Maple leaves, not yet transformed into the gold and red hues of autumn, danced in the light breeze. Henry Puddester had been on campus for 3 weeks. He was chuffed he had successfully managed to find his way from class to his locker and then the Thompson Student Center, where he located the microwave and placed his burrito on the thick glass plate, shut the door, and watched for a second as the flour tortilla rotated inside. Spying a piano, Henry left the burrito for a moment and sat on the dented stool to pluck out Billy Joel's Piano Man. Just as he finished the last chords, water began spraying down on his head, as well as the heads of hundreds of his fellow students, who were now stampeding toward the exit. Henry paused to find the source of acrid smoke that had begun stinging his eyes, and noticed flames leaping out of the microwave and onto the countertop and floor. Henry joined the throng of students pushing through the doors into the quadrangle, just as the first fire trucks arrived. and men in bunker gear ran into the burning building. Outside, Henry stood transfixed with the crowd as the flames spread throughout the entire structure, licking the siding and nearby bushes. A fireman urged them back, roping off the perimeter as firefighters smashed windows and uncoiled thick gray hoses from the backs of trucks. A team mounted a ladder with an axe to cut a hole in the roof. It was when a huge man in a hazmat suit pushed by Henry that he took a step back, crushing the dainty feet of a female student standing directly behind him. "Oh, sorry, oh sorry." Henry's heart raced like it did every time he came in contact with an attractive girl. "It's okay," she answered. "I can always walk on my hands." Her eyes twinkled, and Henry saw that she was sexy in black tights and a short skirt, a cotton t-shirt with David Bowie's Aladdin Sane stretched across her chest. "What was that guy holding in his hand?" she asked. "Geiger counter," said Henry. "Measures radiation." "Radiation? You mean from the microwave?" "I guess." Henry felt his stomach knot. "Should we be moving farther away?" She blinked up at him, her dark hair falling over one eye. "No, there's not enough radiation out here to harm us." "You sure?" Henry smiled. "I'm sure. You'd have to be mighty close to a microwave for it to cause damage." The girl smiled and put a hand on Henry's arm, sending short electrical shocks to his heart and causing the hair to stand up, not only on his arm, but all over his body. "Can you believe some idiot put his burrito in the microwave for 20 minutes? She removed her hand. Henry shook his head, the electrical currents dimming and the hair flattening just as the last timbers collapsed and the building fell in on itself. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, and police began ushering the students away from the quadrangle. "Come on, I'll walk you to your locker," she said, taking his hand and pulling him toward the tunnels. Millie Pearlstein, should not have been in the cafeteria at that time. She should have been in class discussing propositional probability and logic, but philosophy had been canceled. Millie's analytical mind concluded that the odds of her meeting up with this impossibly attractive man were 1 in a billion, maybe 1 in a trillion, who knew? It surely had to be a sign, though, that she and Henry Puddester were a perfect match, perfectly compatible. After the day the Thompson Student Center burned to the ground, it seemed every time Henry went to his locker, there was Millie Pearlstein, fresh and lovely and sweet-smelling. His heart turned somersaults each time he laid his eyes on her. She was so clean. People would think this weird if Henry ever said it out loud, but he valued hygiene. There was a girl in his stats class who paid a lot of attention to him. She expressed intelligent views and had a wicked body and amazing smile, but she dressed like a punk and her hair resembled a wasp's nest. She once asked Henry to go to the breezeway for a beer, but he declined. Millie Pearlstein, however, was unsoiled. Their first official date was the Friday before Halloween, when she asked him to accompany her to a Doug and the Slugs concert, which had to be moved downtown, seeing as the Thompson Student Center no longer existed. For the rest of their years at Memorial, the pair were inseparable. Even years later, when Millie went off to law school in Nova Scotia and Henry stayed in St. John's to do his MBA and start a job at City Hall, he remained smitten. Despite the fact he knew she was dating other men while she was away, he stayed faithful to her. And Millie, realizing that Henry was her true soulmate, he completed her, she said, always made her way back to him. Now, here they were, several decades later, she a criminal defense lawyer and Henry a house husband. Following 35 years of exemplary service, Henry Puddester had just given up his director of marketing position for the city of St. John's to be home after school for their 10-year-old son. How this happened had blindsided Henry. Dash's after-school program announced in January that they'd be closing their doors the first week of April. There were no other facilities taking kids within a 50-mile radius. Henry's mother had agreed to move in to be there for Dash after school, and Henry and Millie tacked an extra line of credit on their mortgage to rip out a section of their backyard and build on a granny flat. Things went sideways after that. Granny was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and 5 weeks later, she was dead. Thinking there would be some equity in his mother's house, Henry gave up his job to let a young hire get his foot in the door and began performing his obligations of stay-at-home father and executor of his mother's estate, only to find out, too late, that instead of being worth money, his mother's estate, and thus Henry, was on the hook for 20 years of back taxes, thrusting the couple into dire financial straits. Their only real asset, a brand new vacant mother-in-law suite that they would no doubt end up having to rent. So it was on a soulless spring day that Henry Puddester trudged up the steps to City Hall for what he knew would be the last time. The sun over Newfoundland had gone into hiding sometime in January and had not poked its head out since. Instead, a slate gray sky had taken up permanent occupancy, tainting all enjoyment of life on the Avalon. The northeasterly wind whipped off the water and cut through Henry's pea coat, and he struggled against its brute force to open the heavy glass door of City Hall. Henry didn't want to pick up his record of employment. He wished he could wind back the clock and still be employed. He caught a glimpse of himself in the double panes. What he saw did not please him. A disheveled version of what Millie kindly called his aging matinee idol looks. She was forever telling him how handsome he was, but the face he saw this morning was weary, more chiseled than old man movie star. His nose was chilblained, his cheeks flushed. It was the gray hair that peeked out from under his Boston toque that never failed to shock him. Ever since the day Millie's new receptionist referred to him as a silver-haired gentleman, he had developed a complex. He ducked inside, pulled off his hat, wiped the rain off his horn-rimmed glasses, and did his best to sneak past the commissionaire, who was hammering away on his keyboard, index fingers pecking like two hens. Don't look up, thought Henry. Henry Puddester, what are you doing here? Wiener, who got his name after swallowing a dozen hot dogs at the staff barbecue, came out of his glass-encased booth, took in the windblown shape of his former colleague. Man, you look like hell. Henry blew out his breath, turned around and smiled, showing all his teeth. It's a bit blustery out there. I'll say, wind's strong enough to blow Jesus himself off the cross. Wiener clapped Henry on the arm. I can't believe you retired. One day you're there like always, slathering on that hand sanitizer, and next day I send old man Bates up to see you. He comes back and says you're gone. Wiener paused to take a breath. Henry eyed the concrete stairs and fingered the portable Purell in his pocket. He would wait until he was out of Wiener's sight to apply it, although thoughts of the germs on the door made his skin crawl. How many years you got in? Gotta be over 30. 2 weeks off 35. That's more years than I've been on this earth. Good on ya, I say. You need to kick back. Take life as it comes. Know what I mean? Wiener placed his crossed hands behind his head and stretched his arms as if he were sitting back in a chair, except he was standing up. Mayor Jones always said you were high-strung. Henry gave a faint nod. Apparently, the mayor wasn't the only one who held this opinion. Millie was always telling him to relax, to be happy with what he had. Thought you'd be hitting the greens in Florida with the boys from marketing. The phone rang then in Wiener's booth. He raised his hand to Henry and made his way back inside. No golf for Henry this spring, but he did hope to sneak away for a motorcycle trip, the spring tune-up ride from Montreal to St. John's. He wanted to honor his deceased mother. He had yet to convince his wife of the merits of this idea, however. She argued he could honor his mother in other ways that cost less money and were closer to home. As he made his way up the concrete stairs, her attorney voice entered his head. Henry, we don't have two beans to rub together. Plus, you retired to take Kiradash. You can't do that very well if you're on some highway between here and Quebec. She kissed him then and patted the top of his silver head. Henry had long accepted that he would never win an argument with his wife. So, while he adjusted to his new position of house husband, Millie continued to lead strategic planning sessions with her legal team and host power lunches for the jet setter she worked with down at Supreme Court. He waited until he was outside the opaque doors of marketing and communications before he pulled out the Purell. He inhaled as he rubbed in the alcohol-based sanitizer and then swallowed before going in. He liked his old co-workers. He just didn't want to see any of them. Luckily for him, what Weiner said was true. The majority of them were now on the Boca Raton golf green, while Henry was stuck in St. John's, enduring the most appalling spring on record. Make no wonder he had a vicious head cold. Henry didn't really want to be golfing, though, although all he wanted was to be in his shed with his 1970 Triumph Bonneville, preparing for the spring tune-up, rather than preparing after-school snacks for Dash. He knew he shouldn't complain. He had hours to tinker with his bike while Dash was at school, and Dash was a good kid, a bit too addicted to video games, but all told, he was a fine example of what today's youth had to offer. It was just that Henry was too old to be a father to a 10-year-old. He didn't have the energy exhibited by the young parents. He didn't have the mental stamina to keep up with the new trends. In fact, Henry Puttester didn't have a clue about parenting. Chapter 2, Thursday, 2 weeks later. Henry Puttester blinked at the baby carrier in the grocery cart and wondered how it got there. He couldn't piece it together. Why would someone put an infant carrier in his shopping cart? It was his cart. The lemon yogurt was there. His guts churned audibly. He liked children, but babies and baby-related things always gave Henry a sense of unease. He hadn't even trusted himself to pick up Dash until he was more than a year old. Henry had felt woozy all morning, but not to the point of hallucinating a floral-patterned infant car seat. He gave the cloth a poke. It was real, but maybe it was empty. Maybe Sundries now sold baby carriers. He studied his cart to see if anything else had changed. What was this? Instead of his hand-chosen pears, there was now a case of pureed baby food. Henry bent down to pick up his bread from the shelf underneath. What the hey? His Paradise Bakery loaves were MIA. Instead, there was a case of baby wipes and diapers. This was not good. Henry came up quickly and dizziness enveloped him. Good thing Millie said she'd get a Dash off to school this morning. He held on to the handle of the shopping cart and took 3 deep breaths. In and out, in and out, in and out. He wanted to bolt, but at that moment, the carrier emitted a gurgle. He was afraid to look inside. What on earth was going on? Could a sleep-deprived mother have mistaken his cart for hers? Or maybe someone had dumped the baby in his cart. Millie had been talking about an Amber Alert yesterday. What was it she'd said? He wished he could remember. She was always telling him his mind was like a sieve. But this morning, it had reached new proportions. Think, Henry, think. Something about an estranged father taking an infant while the mother slept. Police had advised the public to be on the lookout, but not to approach the man. He was considered dangerous. Henry gulped. In front of him, in line, an oversized man in a fedora loaded cases of soft drinks onto the conveyor. Could it be him? He didn't look menacing enough to have stolen an infant. Plus, if he were the one, what would he be doing all casual at the checkout? Unless he was the type who liked to linger at crime scenes to see how things played out. Henry had seen a movie about that once. He scanned his environs. A lean man with a flat cap like the ones British cabbies wore crouched in front of the magazines. A posse of come-from-aways was moving up front, but still no one who fit the bill of space cadet mother or dangerous offender. Henry moved his tongue over his top teeth. It felt like sandpaper. Why was he so thirsty all of a sudden? He licked his lips and rewound his mind back through the aisles of the supermarket. For some reason, it was like his brain synapses were not firing. Fleeting images flashed across his prefrontal cortex, like a commercial, the pictures too quick to properly focus on any one thing. Maybe this was an unsolvable mystery. He would just take his groceries, ditch the cart and carrier at the door. but he couldn't do that. What about the baby? He had to save it in case the dangerous, estranged father changed his mind and came back. Henry knew what to do. He'd bring the baby to Millie. She was good with babies. She'd make sure it was safe until it was reunited with its mother. Henry bent again so he could peep under the cloth. An oval flap was velcroed to the canopy, preventing a view of the contents. The flap was made of the same sunflower patterned material as the rest of the tented area. He was familiar with this configuration from when Dash was born. Henry gently pulled back the Velcro to allow a sight line into the carrier. A whiff of baby powder escaped the cloth walls. The infant inside, a girl, judging from the pink hat and blanket that enveloped it, opened its oversized eyes and started to quiver. Next thing, it was whimpering. Henry could tell from past experience that this was the buildup to a full-fledged cry. He had to act fast, survey the scene. Rubber pacifier was attached to the baby blanket by a tether. Henry grabbed hand sanitizer from his pocket, doused both hands, and quickly plugged the dummy into the baby's mouth. The baby looked worried, but did what babies are programmed to do. It started sucking. Thank you very much.
Now back to me. I hope you enjoyed that glimpse into Henry's life before things go sideways for him. I'm going to take a look at your questions now and answer as many as I can before we do the draw for the book. All right. The first question is, how long did I sit on the concept before writing? I didn't sit on it for any length of time. I just started writing it. So I had written for a contest, a postcard entry, a 500-word story that featured Dolores with her 1983 Ford LTD covered with trinkets. And I didn't win that contest, but Dolores stayed with me and her story kept developing in my mind, and I had to write about her. Anybody who writes knows that sometimes you have no control over your characters, and Dolores was there, and Henry came along as well, and he ended up taking over the story from Dolores and becoming the main character. So I started writing it right away. Here's a question from, that last one was from B. This one's from Helen Shea. Are any of the characters based on people you know? So, of course, none of the characters are exactly like people I know, but I have certainly drawn on my own family. I think my children are all aware that parts of their personalities have made it into the book, but they all seemed okay with it. So, Declan, my youngest, certainly was investigating Fortnite at the time I was writing the book, and I was probably as horrified as Henry was. And my third son, Ryan, he did break his collarbone in an incident very much like what Dash experiences. And sometimes, just every now and then, every couple of years, my husband is a little bit absent-minded. All right, here's a question from Michael O'Keefe. Did any of my children serve as an inspiration for Henry? No, I wouldn't say my children were an inspiration for Henry. No, my children are definitely more astute. Here's a question from Griffin Sheldon. How did I come up with the plot? So at the time when I started writing it, it was just after I turned 50, and I decided I really wanted to be published as a novelist. So I started working on this Dolores Henry story. And lunchtimes, I would write in the mornings, and lunchtimes I would go to my mother's house and we would sit and relax and look at the telegram together. And there were all these brief stories in the paper that in that time just became embedded in my mind. So there were things like about parking meters being vandalized. There was Chase the Ace happening in the Ghouls. There were black bear sightings on the Avalon Peninsula. And all those events that I read about in the newspaper during those relaxing hours with my mother made it into the book. Were there any big inspirations for the supermarket? So I've been the main supermarket goer in our family for 28 years. And I have pulled the supermarket switch. I know I don't look like a person who would, but on several occasions I have switched shopping carts. I've even taken someone's cart around the corner and gone, ooh, this is not mine, this is not mine. I never did find a baby, but when I was developing the idea, I said, what would be the strangest thing you could find in a shopping cart if you did the switch and took one that wasn't yours? Here's another one from B. Are you working on any other writing projects at the moment? Well, this book, The Degrees of Barley Lick, is coming out in August with Running the Goat, Books and Broadsides in Torres Cove. And that one is set in British Columbia on the lower mainland, and it involves geocaching. It's a young adult novel, and a 9-year-old boy is kidnapped, and the kidnapper leaves clues for the distraught father in geocaches, which are buckets hidden in the woods, and you use a handheld GPS to go find them using satellites and coordinates. I'm also writing a book now called Digital Detox, and it's about a group of people who go to Battle Harbor, Labrador to get away from their devices. And a storm rolls in. Of course, a storm rolls in. And the very thing that these people are trying to get away from is what they need to survive. So stay tuned for that one. Here's a question from Vincent. What are some of your favorite books that have inspired you and your style throughout your career? Well, my career is only just beginning, but I have to say, Edward Rich, I find absolutely hilarious. This is Rare Birds, which was made into a Hollywood movie. He also has Something to Like, and his books just crack me up. And Thierry Fallis, who's in Ontario, when I first read The Best Laid Plans, it made me laugh so much that I have read everything this man has written. And both of them were big inspirations for my writing and my desire to write in a comedic style. A question from Amy, what inspired me to write this book? So I've answered that one already. So I think now, wait, another question? Another question is coming in. Okay. Have I ever played Fortnite? I have seen Fortnite played, but I have not played it myself. And I have been quizzed incessantly on the intricacies of Fortnite. And will there be more stories featuring characters from Supermarket Baby? That's from Nick. I thought that in Digital Detox, or perhaps another novel, maybe Dolores will swing by in her Ford LTD. You never know. So you'll just have to read them to find out. Okay, so now we are going to do our prize draw. Okay, I'm going to set up here. I have a little bingo wheel. So everyone who put a comment in the comment section, their name was entered into the prize draw. So, I'm going to put that one back in. Cover up the door, do a little shake. All right, if the number is higher than the number of corresponding names, I may have to draw another ball. So here I go. And we have number 8. So who corresponds to number 8? Let's hear it. I have the sheet. It is Nick Fade. So Nick Fade, you are the winner of Supermarket Baby. So you win this book. You can get in touch with me on my website, Susanflanagan.ca, and let me know how you would like it signed and where to send the book. So congratulations, Nick. Now we have one other prize draw this evening that you weren't expecting, but Yarn Cove has donated these Republic of Newfoundland leg warmers. They're all the rage this spring. You know, lack of heat sometimes causes you to need leg warmers. So I'm going to draw one more. Remove number 8. I'm going to do a little shake again. Okay. Draw for the leg warmers. Here it is. Ooh. Here we go. Number 75. I think I'll have to draw again because we didn't have quite that number. All right, let's see. Number 52. I'm going to draw again. We'll be at this all night. Number two. So for the leg warmers from Yarn Cove, we have Vanessa Kosh. Vanessa Kosh is the winner of the leg warmers. Vanessa, I'll get those to you. So thank you everyone for joining in for this reading. It's been fun. And I hope to do a live lunch, an in-person lunch soon. In the meantime, if you would like to order a copy of Supermarket Baby, you'll find a link on my website, Susanflanagan.ca. If you're joining us from outside of Canada and want to purchase a copy of Supermarket Baby, email Ed Oldford at eoldford@flankerpress.com. I'll be hosting another virtual reading for my novel, The Degrees of Barley Lick, on August 1st on this same channel. So thanks again to Coleman's Market on Newfoundland Drive for allowing me to film in their store. Thank you to Jerry and the team at Flanker Press for believing in me and publishing Supermarket Baby. Thanks to the Writers Union of Canada and the Canada Council Public Reading Program for their financial support. And finally, thanks to Ryan Flanagan, my technician, Madison Bailey, who provided the equipment, and Liam Flanagan, who's my social media advisor. So, happy reading, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And one last thing, if you have Supermarket Baby and you're reading it in your hometown, send me a picture of you holding it with some iconic building in the background so I know where it's coming from. My good friends, Tim and Thomas in Berlin, have already had Henry at the Berlin Wall. So send in those pictures and I'll post them on my social media. Thank you, everyone. Good night.